Hello again, everyone. Edwin Learnard back once again. In this YouTube astrological segment, I'm going to be talking about astrology and the Deon Kay shooting. Now, first off, I want to offer my condolences and prayers to the family and friends of Deon Kay. Thing about this, though, is it is I would say, at least somewhat controversial because based on what I read on the internet about this, the cop that shot a Deon Kay, and basically, or I should say, when Deon Kay was shot and when he tossed the gun, seemed to be at least close to simultaneous. The fact that discarding the weapon, his gun, and when he about the time he got shot seemed to be very close to being simultaneous. I'm not sure what actually transpired first. He probably threw the gun based on the fact that if you're getting shot, a bullet coming at you is coming so fast. He likely discarded the gun prior. I mean, he had to have thrown the gun away, I would think, prior to getting shot. And the thing about this is, if this was something, I mean, this is something that likely could have been avoided. I understand the police shooting him and holding the weapon because he's holding the weapon. It just makes it a very, really tough situation to really decipher. But what I want to talk about, as far as I'm actually going to be talking about the chart of the shooting on that day. I may do. Talk about Deon Kay's natal chart later on, and as far as transits that transpired to natal placements at the time of the shooting. As far as Deon Kay's natal chart goes, though, I don't have an exact birth date for him anyway as of yet. I have an approximate date is around August 12th, because there was some website, it was like Washington City Paper, or was some Washington News something.com, something like that. I don't remember the exact name of the website, where there was something, there was a blog about Deon Kay, and it stated something like that he had celebrated his birthday about 3 weeks prior to the shooting. Shooting occurred on September 2nd, 2020. It would put his birthday at approximately August 12th. August 12th would be 3 weeks prior to the shooting on September 2nd. But when I'm looking at the chart of the shooting, I'm saying, I mean, there's obviously, you have a lot of cold energy. On the time of the shooting, based on what I had researched on the internet, time of the shooting was approximately 3:50 p.m. and it puts the ascendant at Capricorn. Of course, the sun is in Virgo. The sun is opposing Neptune, which can be an indicator of not really seeing things maybe that clearly, things being somewhat obscure. The sun in Virgo by itself can be very discerning and energy, and being punctilious with details. The sun rules the left or the right eye depending on gender. The sun is our attention, what we're focusing on. And when you have the sun opposing Neptune, sun in adverse aspect to Neptune can be an indicator of not seeing things that clearly, even with the discerning Virgo eye, so to speak. This also took place on the full moon in Pisces. I'm sorry, the full moon in Pisces. You have the sun opposing the moon at the time of this shooting. And the thing about it is, it's kind of figurative. I would say somewhat figurative, because the moon rules either the left or the right eye depending on gender. The sun rules either the left or the right eye depending on gender. You have that energy opposing each other. It's basically not seeing things necessarily eye to eye, so to speak. And there's a number of oppositions in this chart, and there's also there's no planets in air. You have the midheaven in Libra, but there are no planets in air, and it really tells me this limited limitations in air in a chart shows where and often you'll have these scenarios where people are having difficulty in articulating things and being able to speak or communicate. The person that got shot, Deon Kay, likely did not have much of an opportunity to say much of anything. I know one thing. I know the fact that Deon Kay being born in August of 2002, that would put his Saturn in late Gemini. Transit North Node in Gemini was very close to it at the time. When you're talking about the North Node in transit in astrology, it can often manifest in issues about one may have to confront or address. Gemini is the sign of communication. It was very close to his natal Saturn in Gemini. Saturn can be associated with authority. Gemini is associated with communication, but also I would say Gemini is the sign connected with mobility because of its correspondence with the third house in astrology. Saturn in Gemini in a negative manifestation may show some limitations in communication and mobility. And you're talking about Saturn being associated with the law. He was obviously, I'm sure he was on foot. He was trying to get away from the officers. Saturn, you're talking about issues with authority, which wouldn't exclude the law, and Gemini being a sign connected with mobility and communication. There's some other, you're talking about Capricorn being on the ascendant in this event chart. That is obviously when you're talking about the ascendant on the first house, the sign on the first house cusp in event chart, I see as being the face of the situation. You're talking about very cold, undemonstrative, callous energy being the face of this event. You also have a number of Capricorn planets making an opposition to Venus in Cancer. Venus in Cancer is at a critical degree, 26 degrees. The thing that strikes me the most in these oppositions involving the Capricorn energy and the Venus in Cancer is the Pluto in Capricorn in opposition to the Venus in Cancer. Pluto can be extremist energy. You're talking about perhaps, and the fact this may have manifested, Pluto in Capricorn in opposition to the Venus in Cancer may have manifested in resorting to perhaps some kind of extreme behavior in order for caring, so to speak, caring for one's safety and security. This death was something that likely could have been averted. There's a lot of extensive review going on with this footage at this point in time, and again, it makes it very difficult to decipher this whole situation, given that the gun was being discarded at about the same time that that the victim was being shot by the police officer. What I don't know, I don't know if they divulged the names of these officers and identify them because I'm curious if they are white officers or they black officers. The thing about this is, if it was a white officer that shot this the black gentleman named Deon Kay, of course there's naturally going to be more outrage, and there's going to be cries of people being this person being colorblind. What's interesting, and I'm not saying this to be really flippant or facetious, but the thing about it is, again, going back to the sun being in opposition to the moon at this time. Now, you're talking about, I'm sure many of you have heard of the renowned, I guess you could say, Facebook founder, Mark Zuckerberg. Was born, he was actually born, it was on a lunar eclipse. The sun was in opposition to the moon. He was born colorblind, in my understanding. Now, I know this is not a lunar eclipse, it's just a regular full moon, but it is interesting that you have the sun in opposition to the moon at this time, and it could be that figuratively saying, somebody may have been colorblind as a result of this, especially if this was an officer that was not black. And you have the Sun and Mercury in discriminating Virgo. The Sun again can be associated with the left or the right eye depending on gender. Mercury is also associated with eyesight, and Mercury at this time was making an opposition, at least a loose one, to the Moon, and was an opposition to Mercury. I'm sorry, to Neptune at this time. You're talking about Moon in Pisces energy. The fact that it was on a full moon, of course, this Moon energy, emotional energy, was intensified and amplified. It could show very chaotic, convoluted, all-encompassing emotions going on at this time. And the Neptune making the conjunction to the Moon certainly didn't help matters. Hold on a moment, people. Sorry about that, I'm back. But anyway, another thing that I'm noticing in this chart, we're looking at Chiron is in Aries. You have Mars in Aries. This could be wounds and suffering due to gunfire. This is something that may be more prevalent now than ordinarily. In this event chart, Chiron in Aries is in the third house of this occurred, I believe, in this young man's neighborhood. Mars in Aries is very close to the fourth house cusp of the end of life, and also one's home. He probably was not far from his home when this shooting actually transpired. Uranus is in the fourth house as well of the end of life, and Uranus in the fourth house could be an indicator of something of a very unusual nature, that something the end of life happening in a very unusual, unexpected, very spontaneous manner. Another thing that I'm seeing too is that Leo is on the cusp of the 8th house of death in this chart, and the person was a sun in Leo that died, and oddly enough. And another thing too is that in this event chart there is a cardinal grand cross configuration. It consists of that Capricorn energy I was telling you about before, and you have the Mars in Aries, Venus in Cancer in the 7th house of the law of open adversaries, and you have in the midheaven in Libra. I'm including the midheaven in this. It may be seen as controversial. Some people may not use a midheaven in Grand Cross configurations. It's a cardinal Grand Cross configuration, and I'm including the midheaven in this. And the thing about it is, in this Grand Cross configuration, you're talking about Pluto, the planet of death, is involved in this. Mars in Aries, which rules gunfire, very close to the 4th house of the end of life in the person's home. Venus in Cancer, which was going to be obviously something that was going to bring about perhaps a lot of sentiments and feelings from someone's home, from someone's family at this time, ones that are very a lot of sympathetic energy. And this is also something. And also remember, the zodiac sign Cancer is about protection as well. This is protective energy. This could be this situation, this event that occurred is going to emphasize perhaps valuing more protection in the future. It might even be more about valuing introversion, about being at home just in order to protect yourself and not get yourself in a situation where something potentially perilous like this could happen. Having Libra involved in this on the midheaven, this is really about the 10th house in astrology can be about what is standing out, or notoriety, the recognition, something where you're talking about energy associated with what's fair and what's equitable. And Libra can also be a zodiac sign associated with the law. The zodiac signs Libra and Sagittarius are what is associated with the law, and what's taking center stage. I mean, is what is reflected on the cusp of the 10th house. This is something that involved something that was involved with the law, and also there's a lot of I would say too, being in Libra, this is about a lot of ambivalence too, and about whether this was actually a fair or equitable, you know, what was the shooting really justified or not. And I'm sure you're going to have a lot of the pros and cons being weighed on this matter. When you're talking about grand cross configurations in astrology, they often can bring about a lot of adversity and tribulation, and this certainly was no exception. And anyway, there's really not much more I wanted to get at as far as this goes. One of the ruler of the eighth house. Again, I want to talk about this real quick. The zodiac sign Leo is on the cusp of the eighth house. The ruler of that eighth house is in the eighth house of murder. And another thing is that the ruler of the fourth house of the end of life is in the fourth house. So this was something in the end of life which was tied in perhaps with one's safety and security, or maybe a lack of it, I should say, in this case. And it did happen near the person's home, I believe, where this actually transpired. So uh, in something too, when you're talking about the ruler of the eighth house in the, this could also manifest in a murder or death that was involved in something criminal related. He was in Deon Kay was in possession of a gun. I'm sure it was probably illegal, and he probably did not have the license to carry, but that's something I'm not 100% sure. With this Pisces energy, a lot of things could be very obscure and unclear, I would say. Well, one last thing I wanted to say, and I keep saying I'm going to end this, and my Gemini moon keeps contradicting itself. The South Node in Sagittarius was conjunct the ascendant at this time, and when you're talking about the South Node being involved in a conjunction in astrology, it can be involved. It could indicate what you're going away from. The energy that it's conjuncting is about what you could be going away from. And sadly, the first house in astrology can be about one's vitality, the physical body, and that is where sadly how this may have manifested and panned out. Sagittarius is associated with the law, and which the South Node is in Sagittarius at this time, and the zodiac sign Capricorn is on the cusp of the first house. And that is, again, of course, it's very cold, could be very cold, callous energy. Anyway, people, that'll conclude this YouTube astrological segment. Until next time, people, Edwin Learnard saying stay well.